Hi, I'm Garm1, and this is Midgardia's cool crowdfunding show. I'm here today with Ben Wallis. How's it going?
It's going great. How are you?
I'm doing pretty well. So, you're here to tell us a little bit about Broken, so why don't you tell us about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm as I said, I'm Ben, also known as that gamer priest out there sometimes on social media, and I'm the co-founder of the All Ports Open Network. Not too long ago, we started branching out into something called Apon Games, our game publishing branch of the All Ports Open Network. And this summer, we're going to be doing a crowdfunding campaign for my two-player tragic romance game, Broken, as you said. Broken is a duet cooperative storytelling game about broken physical objects and broken hearts. The core mechanic of the game is breaking physical objects as you slowly break up a relationship. So yeah, it's an artifact-based game and a ritual-based game that tells the story of a breakup. It's usually romantic breakups. It doesn't have to be. You could break up anybody in any kind of relationship, and that could be as vast and broad as you want, but it really is an emotional game that captures the feeling of going through a breakup. It's emotionally deep, it's tragic, it's potentially very sad. It has the potential to really pull you in and be immersive. It's cathartic. It's about hope and loss, healing and heartbreak, and empathy building, and all kinds of deep themes along those lines. So yeah, so that's Broken.
Right on. So, when you say breaking a physical object, are we talking about,
Yeah,
like, smashing pottery, ripping up
we
paper?
are. We
Nice.
are. We are. So the kind of core mechanic, core ritual of the game is that you gather 10 physical objects that you and your play partner, as you're playing, have gathered beforehand. And you gather these physical objects, and they serve both as scene prompts for the scenes of the game. You have 10 scenes that you play through. And then at the end of the scene, you break the physical object. So that is the sort of that is one way to play the game. There is an alternative way to play the game, which is that we're on a, actually, since we're on I can show you, I forgot that we're on video because I've been doing a lot of these interviews, like getting ready to crowdfund the game, and some of them are of course audio only, but the video ones were really fortunate because I get to show you my artifacts. So
Ooh.
here is a vinyl record. This is actually a Peter Cetera record from an 80s rom-com version of Broken we played, and that is the Broken record from that. And then an alternative way of playing the game, and I've got this ready for Pride Month right here, is that you can play with popsicle sticks instead of physical objects. So if you desire to like play, but you're like, I don't really want to break stuff, which I, by the way, do highly recommend if you can, because it's super cathartic and fun and exciting. But one way you can also play is by getting popsicle sticks. I have these Pride Month rainbow colored popsicle sticks. And then what you do is you can write physical object descriptions on the popsicle sticks. That really frees you to make up whatever the heck you want. Like last night I did one with somebody where we made like a car, like a classic car was one, or like a boat, could be one. I mean, anything that you want when you're writing it down. And then you would snap the popsicle stick. So you can see I have my broken popsicle sticks here from a previous game. This one I think is from the Alchemistress's smash up, TTRPG mashup we did with Alchemistresses. I'm pretty sure that's what these are. Yeah, because this one says anime VHS on it. And then yeah, you snap those instead of a physical object. So one of the things you can do if you break physical objects is that you can kind of get really, the game has like this whole meta, has like a bunch of meta elements to it really. One of them is that gathering the physical objects happens sort of before the game, but you and your play partner can make a game of that in some ways by like going together to a thrift store, or to like, I don't know, like I don't know, not a flea market. I mean, you could go to a flea market, but I'm trying to think of a yard sale or something, right? Or like a Goodwill, and you can pick out your objects there that you're going to break. And so you kind of have this pre-game game that you can play, which involves getting the objects. So there's a lot of different ways that you can go with breaking the physical objects. And then, yeah, at the end of every scene, when part of the scene, when the scene ends, you both simultaneously destroy a character trait, and you break an object.
Nice. And that's awesome because it leaves you with those like sweet physical artifacts of play, which I'm a sucker for.
Yeah, I've been thinking a lot about that lately and how it's kind of like the opposite of a keepsake game, sort of. Because like with a keepsake game, you end up with a keepsake that you keep. It's like an item that you've made through play, right? And so, like keepsake games, in this game, you're imbuing meaning into the objects and memory and connection, but you're breaking them. So like that's why I call it an artifact-based game rather than calling it a keepsake game. But they are keepsakes then. I mean, I have mine around, but they're like broken. So yeah, I'm still sorting through the philosophy of that. but but yeah, that's yeah.
I mean, hey, maybe in the near future somebody will make a game based on repairing broken objects and, the cycle
Oh,
continues.
the synergy. It would be so great. Oh, that's such a good idea.
My brain is very big. Yes. I could not break any of my stuff. All of it is so precious.
Well, so that's the thing. So either you have to decide you're going to part with something, or you have to find things that aren't precious to you can break from elsewhere, like going to a thrift store, or you play with the popsicle sticks. And the popsicle sticks are such a viable and easy way to play. The other thing about that way, they both have their benefits, which is really cool. Like I've now played enough games both ways that I see they each have their unique benefits. Like when you do the popsicle sticks, the objects end up becoming so much more like you really people get specific with them, like very specific. Like for example, a painting that I painted of you, like that could be an object. That's not an object you're going to really break in real life because it doesn't exist. But when you write them on the popsicle sticks, you can get like super specific. Like my grandfather's pocket watch. You're probably not going to really break my grandfather's pocket watch, but you could easily write that on a popsicle stick and then it's full of meaning.
Yeah, absolutely. So, how did Broken initially come about?
Yeah, I am the co-host of a podcast called Pot of Love with my spouse that's been on for about 5 years. It's a romance and relationship actual play podcast. We play romance and relationship games, and we did that for 5 years. It's been on hiatus for a little bit now, but it has been around since 2017. And I'm also I've been divorced and I am now remarried. So I've gone through divorce and remarriage. And I went through a pretty challenging divorce with a lot of pain and baggage and heartache, as often happens with a divorce. Maybe all of them. I don't know, or many of them. Let's say uh, it can be a very challenging thing to go through. And I knew for mine that I kind of came to know as me and my spouse now we're doing Pot of Love together and playing romance games that I wanted to process my divorce and sort of create a memoir of my divorce by writing a game. It felt to me like the only adequate way for me to tell my personal story was to create the framework for other people to create stories. Figuring out how to do that, figuring out how to make mechanics that simultaneously captured the feelings of going through a divorce or a breakup while also giving opportunities for empathy building and understanding and self-awareness and self-understanding and hope and healing. Like that was how I was going to process and heal. And so I did that. And I I had the idea that I was going to make it a tragic romance game because it was going through because I wanted to reflect this breakup motif, and so we started working on it. And the first version of the game existed with. It's interesting because the name of the game broken existed before the primary mechanic of the game was breaking physical objects, which sounds crazy, right? Because you would think it's the other way around, but actually it was not. It was that a lot of the ritual of the game existed first, and we recorded an actual play of very early version of the game several years ago for Pot of Love, and then I took a break from Broken because I knew something about the fundamental nature of the game was missing, and I needed to take time to find what the core mechanic of the game was, and eventually I did, and then everything kind of fell into place. It solved a lot of design problems, and then I knew I was time. It was time. All right, I'm ready to get this game into the world, let other people play it, lots of play testing, lots of sharing, and here we are getting ready to crowdfund.
Right on. And yeah, you've got a itch funding campaign starting up on July 19th.
Yes. Oh
So
my gosh, it's right around the corner. I can't wait for people to be able to get the game, but of course there's a lot of anxiety when you crowdfund.
yeah, I've had a lot of people on here tell me that it's the most stressful month of their lives. Not necessarily a month in this case, but most stressful.
Exactly. Well, that's the thing. So the hope is that with itch funding model, it relieves some of the stress on the team and the creators. The hope is that it solves some of that problem, but it also doesn't because it still is. I'm not even there yet, and I can tell you. Well, we just finished an itch funding campaign with Apon Games for our game, The Hard Lessons. And so I just went through this for the hard lessons, and now I'm turning around and going through it again, like right away for Broken, while simultaneously completing the work on the hard lessons. Like literally before we did this interview, I was finishing or doing work on the layout for the next version of that. So yeah, it's a lot, and it is. I imagine for a Kickstarter where if you don't fund the game, you don't have a game, or at least it is a large impediment because you haven't funded an all or nothing system. I imagine that must be tremendously stressful. Uh, yeah, I can only imagine.
Yeah, some of my friends are currently running a Kickstarter campaign, just like constantly stressing about it.
Yeah,
But such is life.
yeah,
So, what's the target audience of Broken?
yeah. It's a great question. I would say that the target audience of Broken is anyone who wants to explore the themes. I don't think that it's necessarily just for people who are into tabletop role playing games. I think that a lot of people will find Broken because they are in the TTRPG scene in some way. But I think anybody who wants to play games, has an interest in playing games, especially that explore the themes of breakup, heartbreak, loss, memory, identity, and are willing to sit down at the table with somebody across the table from someone and explore those themes in a safe environment. I think anyone who wants to do that is the target audience for this game. And my hope is that people will find it who it's a great game for them, even if they're not experienced role players, even if that's not the way they think about the games like this. It's a very viable way of playing Broken that you don't do a tremendous amount of role playing. Like most people play probably will because that's how they come to it. You could very easily play the scenes in sort of a third person narrative sort of way where you're like describing scenes in a movie, and you don't have to have ever played a role playing game to do that. So I think that that my real hope is that people who maybe have experienced some sort of loss in their life, especially through relationships or breakups, will find the game and it'll be cathartic for them or help them process a little bit. I would love that. That would mean the world to me. But of course, lots of people are going to find it and they're going to play very lighthearted games that you know aren't 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 exploring personal loss, and that's also wonderful. And I hope that they do.
Yeah, and that tone is obviously something that you should establish beforehand. I know that there's some safety tools built into the document for that reason.
We take safety very seriously because we know the potential is there for a lot of bleed. We don't want people to become re-traumatized. Those are things that are really important to us with the design. So I knew right away when I was getting ready to release Broken that safety was going to be so crucial, and I wanted to bring in a skilled, experienced safety designer and game designer to work on the safety design and consultation with me on the game. And so we brought Bo Yeager Sheldon, who is the designer of script change, on the team as the safety designer and consultant for this game. So one of the things that we're funding through the crowdfunding campaign is the safety design. So there are safety tools in the Ashcan edition, which is the version of the game that people will be able to access the moment that they back the game on itch funding. You'll get the beautiful full color layout Ashcan edition immediately that you can just take to table and play it right away. But there are there are safety tools in there that I built into the game, including aftercare, which a lot of games don't talk about, but we take very seriously. So that's all there. But the final version of the game that we're funding will be layering safety tools into the rules of the game. And Bo Sheldon is going to be working on that with us. And I'm very excited to have them and have Thoughty Games as part of the team for Broken.
Right on. I'm glad to hear it. So, are there any other aspects of Broken that you'd like to bring up that we haven't touched on yet?
So one thing we didn't talk about yet was character creation, which I think it could be really interesting to people who are learning about the game because it's very not standard way of doing character creation. Because when you create your traits, they're not so much your traits as they are kind of the other person's traits. So what you're doing is your 5 traits that you're creating are sort of relationship traits in a way because they are things that you're either attracted to about the other person or interested in about them or love about them or that you love about being in a relationship with them. So you might put something very specific like their deep brown eyes, or you might put something like we laugh together all of the time, or you might put something like the way I feel very secure when I'm with them. But they're subjective and they're from your character's perspective. That's key because they're not objective things, they're subjective. So some of them might be about objective things like the color of someone's eyes, but like I might put you like to be teased, but you might not like to be teased, and that's a lot of the energy from which the breakup comes from, and you become disillusioned with those traits. Every scene, one of you will become disillusioned with one of your traits. And at the end of the scene, you'll burn the trait and then you'll break the object. And that's how a scene ends. So that's the first thing I would say if people are interested in learning about the game that I think is an aspect they may be interested in. And then the other mechanic, it's really interesting when you go on one of these little press tour things talking about your game with people, you listen to other people talk about your game a lot. I've gotten to do that recently. And it's very educational to do that. It helps me see my game in new ways, and I really appreciate hearing other people talk about it. One of the mechanics of the game people talk about a ton because I think it has a lot of potential for to be emotionally devastating. And the thing that always makes me cry in the game, like every time I've cried playing Broken, it's because of this, is that there's a voicemail mechanic. So after 3 of 10 scenes, you secretly record a voicemail for each other. So you take like your voice memo on your phone, you go in the other room, and you record the other person a message. Or it could be a letter that depending on your time period, it doesn't have to be a voicemail, but you record a message for the other person. But you don't listen to them until the end of the game after you've broken up. And as soon as you have broken up, the moment you've broken up, you play the voicemails back for each other in silence. And they end up being the most devastating thing a lot of times because you kind of, without realizing it, you inevitably, because it's only after 3 scenes, you're still kind of in this, a lot of NRE or new relationship energy is still there because you've just started playing the game. And so a lot of the things that you talk about in the voicemail and you talk about in like a positive way in the voicemail are the things that you end up breaking up over at the end of the game. So the voicemails can be absolutely devastating. Plus, it's always just really hard to hear the other person say like, you make me so happy and I love you when you've literally just broken up. And it kind of brings the memory full circle. The game explores memory a lot in its rituals, in the way that it works. And the fact that people, when they break up, don't remember things the same way. That's one of the core concepts of the game. So hearing back your voicemail from earlier in that moment, it just plays in that memory space about, it's meant to really explore these themes of like, did I remember that voicemail correctly? Did we remember that period of time the same way? How does the other person receive that voicemail? And by hearing it at the end of the game, it plays with that memory aspect in this whole different way. And one of the common themes in breaking up with people is that you find items from your relationship after the fact. And so I needed to include that feeling somehow to really capture what it's like to go through a divorce or a breakup, because like I think everyone who's been divorced finds the letter or the card that the other person wrote them afterward, or the picture of the two of you that's just makes you break down, and I couldn't tell a breakup story in a game without including some sort of mechanic like that. So yeah, those are the things that I think a lot of times people stand out for people when they talk to me about the game.
Yeah, no, those are fantastic. I really like the creating the other person's character, sort of creating your
Yeah,
perception of the other person's character.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, because a lot of times in a relationship, right, you find that a lot, especially a relationship that's heading towards breakup, a lot of times you realize I do so I am a Episcopal priest as my full-time job. And so I do premarital counseling and I counsel a lot of people who are going through I've counseled a lot of people who are going through relationship difficulties in addition to my own. And one of the things that I've noticed about that I think is really an important thing to notice is that a lot of times people start to identify themselves, see themselves in the other person or like in relationship to the other person. So like your identity can, I mean, depending on how toxic sort of the relationship is that you're in, you can start seeing yourself almost completely in your relationship with the other person. And so, yeah, in order to kind of like think about self-awareness and identity, you know, we do this thing where your character's identity in the game is very largely made up of like the way they see themselves in relationship to the other person.
Right. This sounds like a deep emotional experience. The exact kind of deep emotional experience I live in fear of. Um, but no, seriously, this
Yeah,
this sounds great.
it is potentially a very deep and emotional experience, which is partially why I often, when I talk about the game, make sure to say like, it also doesn't have to be. I mean, it always will be to some level, right? But we've had people play the game who we had one of our playtest groups, instead of playing like a romantic relationship, they played two D&D characters from their already existing D&D game that had stopped traveling together.
Oh,
Like they had gone their separate ways. And so they did that story. And I'm sure it had emotional depth to it, but it was different in a lot of, very different. So yeah, it's an potentially emotionally intense game. I think how intense it is kind of depends on the players and what you want to explore with it. You can definitely explore very tragic themes and get really sad. But I think there's ways to play where it explores a lot of those themes in a little bit different way and maybe a little bit lighter.
yeah, absolutely. This would be an excellent candidate for being played on stage at a con or something, especially with the dramatic
Yeah.
smashing things.
I hadn't even thought that far ahead with this game. I would love that to happen in the future. That would be so cool. Yeah, you're right. It's like a great because of the smashing, it would be a really fun con game.
Yeah, and it wouldn't be too hard to rig up the voice recording to like the speaker system of the area or something, so you
Yeah.
can play that back at the end. That would be a good a good experience.
Yeah, well, hopefully that's in its future at some point.
Yeah, yeah. Once it's slightly safer to go to cons and all that, but
Yeah, seriously.
yeah. Um, any final words before we say goodnight to our lovely audience?
Yeah, let me just I should probably I didn't say these when you asked me about the itch funding earlier. I didn't say the links. I should probably let people know how they can find it, right? So if they go to if this is before people are watching this before the game goes live, you can go to bit.ly/broken launch, bit.ly/broken launch, and that'll let you can sign up to get an email the moment the game goes live. You just have to put your name and email in, and then we will only send you. Well, you'll get a confirmation. You have to confirm your email. A lot of people those have been going to people's spam, which is a whole frustrating thing. Very frustrating thing. But is once you confirm your email, we will only send you one email when it goes live. So that's my promise. If people do that, we're not going to spam you with a ton of emails. You'll get one email when the game goes live to let you know. So that's bit.ly/broken launch to be notified when the game goes live for the crowdfunding campaign. And then if the crowdfunding campaign is already live and you want to just see the page or find it or back the game, you can go to bit.ly/broken game. bit.ly/broken game. It's on itch.io from Apon Games. People can also follow Apon Games so that you can see our other games we have on there, or you can follow us, and that's apongames.itch.io. Yeah, all of this is a part of the All Ports Open network, and our website is allportsopen.com.
And all those links will be handily below in the description.
Hooray! Very convenient.
All right. Well, Ben, it's been lovely having you on.
Thank you so much for having me. I can't tell you how much it means to me that you made the time to have me on the show and talk about my little game.
Well, it's been a pleasure. Yeah, have a good night, everybody.
Bye.